welcome to another live Wells Tech training event. We are so happy you are here. Today we are going to be talking about fuel injectors. We got some great stuff going on with fuel injectors, and I'm sure you're going to see some things you have never seen before. When we were going through this, I saw some stuff I never saw before, so don't feel so bad. All right, but before we get started, first, yes, we have to talk about the t-shirt giveaway. Yes, the Wells t-shirt. And here's your question for this training class. What does this symbol mean? What does that symbol mean? That's not a common one, but it definitely is a symbol. I tried to draw it the best I could, but what does that symbol mean? There you go. Okay, fuel injectors. Oh yes, before we get started, I want to talk about our last training class. Remember, that was the PO300 before the Christmas break there. And I got one comment from Bus Jockey 1. And what he said was, I'd like to add something. He said, wouldn't it be a good idea with this random misfire code to also do a relative compression test to get an idea of the mechanical integrity of the engine? And I'll tell you what, you are absolutely correct. And Bus Jockey, that is exactly how I'd like you to think. And all of you guys out there, question what we are doing. Please, go ahead and question it. And if you don't think it was complete, let us know. Or if you thought it was complete, or maybe we did more than you thought we should have, let us know. We're all in this together, okay? And we all learn from each other. That's what this is all about, okay? And that's why we're here. That's why you're there. Let's do it together and let's get better. But Bus Jockey, I wanted to give you a shout out there and thank you very much. You were right on, my brother. Right on. Okay. All right, let's get started with injectors. Fuel injectors. Fuel injectors have been on cars for a long time. Electronic fuel injectors, probably about, the late 80s, right, is when they started coming into their own. And the vehicle that we're going to be talking about today is a 91 Buick, right? Yeah. Mike, a 91 Buick that had a six-cylinder in it, 2.8, right? 3.3. It had 3.3 in it. And what the symptoms were a loss of power. He also had, didn't he have a code in there too? PO300. Yeah, he had a PO300, random misfires, and things like that going on. We're not going to have the vehicle here today for a demonstration. The vehicle got sold, so we don't have access to it. But we got something better. We got a fuel injector tester, and Mike is over there right now. We're going to go over there in a minute, and you're going to see some really cool stuff on this. And yeah, I like to do things on the car and show you exactly, but this is really cool. You're going to like this. So we're going to go and run these injectors just like they are in the vehicle, and this will give us an opportunity to actually see what's happening inside that intake manifold, okay, as far as the injectors are concerned. It's really cool. All right, so before we get started, though, let's take a look at what injectors look like. And Mike, if you can bring that picture up. There we go, right there. Okay, and this is actually an injector that we took to the tool room, and we had them cut a wedge into it so we could actually see what was inside. And you can see up here, we have the connector, and down here, right, we have the windings. Okay, that's a very important part of these injectors is the winding. Okay, and it's a critical part. And that's the part that you are testing when you check resistance. Okay, that's the part, and we're going to be doing this off the vehicle here in just a few minutes. We're going to show you that. But what's really important about those windings is this, and you always have to keep in mind, it's virtually just one long, it is not virtually, it is one long piece of wire from one tab to the other. Okay, and it's one long piece of wire. And around that wire, they put a coating, and that coating protects each winding of that wire from the other windings, and it keeps them from touching or shorting out. And what happens over time from expansion and contraction, because as these windings get hotter, they expand, right? And that coating starts to break off. And when that coating breaks off and this winding touches this winding touches this winding, what we end up with is instead of having a wire this long, let's say it's this long, we end up with a wire this long. So now we have a short. Okay, that's what a short means, a short to ground or a shorted wire. Okay? All right, so those are the windings right there. Down below that is the pintle. And the pintle is also a very important part of an injector. When you run current, always remember this, whenever you run current through a wire, magnetic field builds around that wire. So if you have a long wire like this, you're going to get a bigger magnetic field, and that magnetic field is going to be strong enough to pull that pintle off the nozzle, which is right down here at the bottom. Right down at the bottom. It pulls that pintle up off the nozzle and opens the nozzle up, and fuel then can spray in to the intake passage. Okay? That's how it works. Now, if you can imagine, if those windings are being shorted out, we have a wire this long now, what's going to happen to that magnetic field that builds around that wire? That magnetic field is going to be condensed. It's not going to be as strong, and it's not going to be as big as what it needs to be to pull that pintle up. And when we start looking at these injectors, you're going to see the result of that. Okay, before we go over to the car, let's take a look at this wiring diagram. Okay, this is the wiring diagram for that vehicle. Now, what's interesting about this is this. First of all, look at the top. You can see that they're fed, all the injectors are fed from the same source. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, so let's start that out. Let's start out, okay, so now you can see, stop it right, a little bit further there. There, stop it right there. Okay, so now you can see that each one of those injectors are being fed by that common fuse. What's interesting about this, and that's not on cars today, and you'll understand why in a second, is that all these injectors are fired at the same time. Okay, you see that they're controlled by the computer, the PCM at the bottom, right down here. Okay, Mike, start it back up again and watch the arrows. Stop it right there. Okay, now we have turned on the current flow for each one of those injectors all at the same time. Okay, let it flow through. And when the current flows through, it goes down to ground. And whenever you run current through a wire, you build a magnetic field around it. And that's what those lines around those injectors represent, is the magnetic field that's been built. Okay? And as soon as you cut that ground again, it breaks that magnetic field. In the pintle, there's a spring on the top of that pintle that pushes that pintle back closed again. Okay, that's how injectors work. And what's interesting though is once they start shorting out, how they start reacting to that. And I never really understood how they would react. In my mind, I had a vision of how I thought they may react, but actually I was wrong. And you'll see here as soon as I get over to Mike. So that's about it. By the way, if you have any questions, let's send them in early. If you have your answer to this, let's send it in as early as possible so we can answer those questions while we're still live. Okay? Let's go over and visit Mike. All right, let's have some fun.
Okay.
All right. What do we have here?
Well, our injector machine.
Injector
testing machine. Yeah, okay. That's it.
By the way, we got this from our engineering department. They
Yeah.
didn't need it anymore, so they said, do you want this? Ah, okay.
We'll do something with it.
We'll play with it.
Yeah.
And we found a place to play with it, and this was it.
Right.
So let's talk about what we got set up here.
All right, well, here's our 4 injectors. These are 4 of the 6 out of our Buick from that 3.3 liter.
Right.
So we took 4 of them out and set them in here, hooked them up to our machine. Our machine's a little bit different than the car. It fires each injector individually.
Right, it's firing each one individually, so keep that in mind when we go through this testing. Remember, when it's on the car, on this particular vehicle, it was firing all the injectors at the same time. So you were drawing from the same source of voltage. So what will happen then is the injector that is shorted out is going to draw the available voltage away from the other injectors.
Right.
Okay, so all the injectors are going to drop down. But we thought was really interesting with this is how it reacted to different RPMs and how it looked on the scope individually if you were firing that one all alone.
Exactly.
And so pretty cool stuff. So let's first check the resistance. Let's see what the resistance is like.
Like any injector test, this is what we'd start with.
Right.
So we'll go ahead, hook up our leads here, and we'll check.
And what is the spec for this now?
We'll check injector 4, 11.8 to 12.6 ohms.
Let's go up to the jib. There we go. They should be able to see it. There we go. Right there. So you're at
12.3 ohms.
12.3. So we're well within specs there on that one.
That one looks good. So that was injector 4. Let's go to injector 3 now. And
there you can see it. Yep, they can see it. 6.3.
6.3 ohms.
6.3 ohms. So we're half.
Yeah, that's
half
a shorted
resistance.
injector.
That is definitely a shorted injector, and it'd be definitely an injector you want to change.
Yeah.
So anyways, we know that injector is bad. There's no doubt about it. But what we want to do is see how it reacts.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't get to see this stuff every day.
Yeah, we never really get to see inside of a cylinder.
Right.
All right.
So why don't you go ahead and run it? Run the first test. Explain what you're going to do.
Okay, so right now our machine is set up. We're going to run the injectors at 600 RPM with a 3 millisecond on time.
Okay.
So that's pretty much like idle.
Yeah.
These injectors will be idling right now.
Okay.
So I'm going to fire it up.
All right, good.
Our fuel pump will prime
let's go
up.
There, now they're starting to fire, and you can see that they're all firing. You can see they're all spraying in here pretty well. But that's at a low RPM.
Right, yep.
You can see our bad one here is a little bit lower than what it should be.
And the pattern doesn't look quite right. The spray pattern, it looks a little different.
It's kind of hard for you guys to see this, but when you look real close at it, you can see that it's kind of a globby pattern.
Yeah, and there's actually some drips falling down into there.
Right. Okay, good.
All
so we know that it's firing at lower RPM.
Right.
Let's empty the chambers.
Okay.
Ken?
All right.
And then let's run it. Let's put the scope on.
Okay.
And let's run it through a cycle, an RPM change.
So I got 2 amp clamps here. We're going to just amp clamp the feed wire for 2 different injectors.
Right. What we did here is each one of these injectors have a connector on it. So what we did is we split the coating on the connector so we could get into the wires. And if we amp clamp around the wire that's feeding the voltage, we'll be able to see just like on the car.
Right.
Okay. So fun stuff.
Yeah, it's just like being on a car.
Yeah, just like being on a car.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just run our machine through an automated test. And this will run multiple different RPM and different on times.
Okay.
So
it's like running it through a cycle of checking different pulse widths, different RPMs, that kind of thing.
Yep.
It's going through a test cycle.
All right, I'm going to start it up.
Okay.
Should start up firing here.
Let's watch it here first before we. Okay. So now we're at idle. It looks like. Already now we're going to a higher RPM. You can see that this one here is already cut out.
Yeah, we've already lost cylinder 3.
Right, cylinder number 3 is gone. I don't know if you guys can see that. Sure enough, yep.
Okay.
Okay, good. Now let's take a look at the scope pattern.
We go to our scope now, and you can see when our injectors start firing again, you can see this channel 1 is our good injector, channel 2 is our bad injector. And you can see our current spikes are huge on there, almost double if not triple the normal current draw for that injector.
And what's interesting too is it's not drawing the extra current on every cycle. Okay,
Right.
And I think that is because our scope isn't fast enough to pick it up.
That could be.
I don't think our scope is fast enough. It
Right
should
now.
be drawing extra amperage on each one, but this is the kind of pattern that we get. You have to be careful when you're using a scope. You got to remember. Okay, if we used a lab scope, a scope that they use in our lab, in our laboratory, let's go to the front camera here. If we use the scope that was in our laboratory here at Wells, we would see every one of those extra spikes.
Yeah.
Okay, but the scopes that we use on a car isn't always fast enough to pick that all up.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep that in mind when you're using a scope. Don't get fooled by that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay,
even
let's go
though-
back to our jib here. And yeah, there we go. Excellent. Now we can see there's a huge difference here. This guy isn't hardly firing at all.
Yeah, there's-
But this guy here has got more fuel in it.
Turn it off.
Yeah,
There we go.
this guy here has got the number 4. What was the resistance on these two?
This one was 12.5, 12.6, and
Okay.
this one was down to 12.2.
12.2. So, and this one's got a lot more fuel in it.
Right.
It's not enough just to check it for resistance.
Right.
Okay, because we are seeing a difference here in these,
I'd say
in the
that's
flows.
About 10% or so.
Right, it's about
10%
10%
more
difference.
fuel.
And on the car, you're going to see quite a difference on the drivability with
Yeah.
this. So very interesting stuff. And honestly, it's the first time I ever saw injectors work like this in person.
Right.
You can see it, in different videos and stuff
you,
like
you
that.
can kind of get a feel for how an injector works in a car when it's misfiring or when it's backfiring or whatever.
Right.
But this you actually get to visualize.
Yeah, you get to visually
see
see
inside
what's
the
going on.
cylinder.
It's pretty cool, and the scope pattern is pretty cool too.
Yeah.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that. We enjoyed bringing that to you. It's unusual because we usually have a car, but we thought this would be better. This was a lot more
Alright.
fun. Do we have any answers?
Yeah. Jeff says good afternoon.
Okay.
Terry
Yes,
asks. Terry asks if we've sold or stole the vehicle.
Well, it wasn't our vehicle. It is a guy that works at Wells. He's one of our CAD designers, and he actually sold it. We wanted him to keep it for a couple months, but apparently it didn't work out. And so, but actually doing it like this, I think was even better than doing it on a car, honestly. So as far as I know, it was sold, Terry, or whoever said that.
Yeah, that was Terry. And then NCPDFSB says, looks like an air regulator symbol from Euro.
Oh, our symbol. Okay. Is that the only answer?
There's one more. And then Pete
Pete.
White says heating element similar to what's
Pete,
in an O2 sensor.
you are my hero. Yes, Pete. That is the correct answer. It is a heating element. And you will see that on heated oxygen centers. You may see that. You may see that design on a rear window, heated seats,
Seat heaters, yeah.
right on your steering wheel.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So you could see that around there. There are other symbols that are similar, right? Like you got the radiant symbol and stuff like that.
Right. Yep.
But this is the actual symbol for a heating element. Very good, Pete. Send me an email. I'm going to send you out one of these very cool Wells Tech T-shirts. Welcome to the Wells Tech family. All right, is that it?
Yeah.
Any
we
other
just gotta
questions?
Pull the email up on the screen there. There we go.
Okay. Yep. There's my email address. Pete, send me an email. Thank you, my brother. Very good. That was very good.
All right.
That's it. Anything else
that's
you
it.
want to? All right. Great stuff. Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Without you being here, we would not be here. Thank you for being there, I mean.
Yeah.
And we'll see you again next time in the Wells Tech Garage.
See you then.